Hello, everybody. Welcome to Proc-N-Roll, your guide to practical procurement. Today, we have a special edition of a jam session. And joining me here today in this jam session is Arnaud. He's the head of procurement, indirect procurement, I think, over at BIC. Do I have the title roughly
Global
right?
head of Indirect Procurement, exactly. Thanks
Yeah.
for having me.
Oh, it's really nice to have you here. And I've got to say, finding the head of indirect procurement for BIC here in the Rocky Mountains in Utah, that was a little bit of a surprise to me. Like, what brought you to Utah, and what makes you stay? And don't brag about it too much because we don't want everybody to come, right?
It's a long story. So I came to Utah kind of by accident back in '07.
Yeah.
I was finishing a grad school degree in Arizona, and I was looking for jobs in the US. I'm obviously French. You will hear it through my accent. And I got a job offer through Danone, the yogurt company at the time, and it was supposed to be in New York. And halfway through the process, yep, we're sending you to Utah, so you take it or you leave it. And I took it, and that's how I got to Utah in the first place. And I've gone in and out of Utah a few times, and I always end up coming back.
Yeah. No, it's a beautiful place, and as we were talking about a moment ago, this time of year it's stunning. The mountains have color on them. The leaves are changing. The air is crisp. The fruits on the trees, all the apples, and it's
Yeah,
really
it's the
awesome.
perfect season right now. Yes.
Yeah. So, one of my favorite things to ask people is about their journey into procurement. It seems like there's always some unique twist that puts people there. So, tell me about how did you go to school and study procurement, or what was your journey like?
No, I did not. So I went to school originally for engineering, so mechanical and industrial engineering. When I was growing up, I wanted to either be a pilot or work on Formula One cars. And so engineering was kind of the way to get into there.
Well, those are almost the same, super high speed.
I come from the Toulouse area in France, which is where Airbus is located. So there was always a big plane focus, and then cars kind of run in a family.
Yeah.
And throughout my, engineering school career, I realized being either in a, study department or on a floor of a factory just working on processes was fun, but not something I wanted to do for my entire career or life. So I was looking at something different.
So did you start in roles like that? You started doing like floor level engineering?
I got some internships in that kind of area. And then my last internship for engineering school, I got into a procurement consulting company who was looking for somebody with more of a technical background. And that's kind of how I got into procurement.
Random internship
Into technical buying. One of the first platform in France that was starting to do reverse auctions and things like that.
Yeah.
For mostly focus on the automotive industry at the time. And that kind of got me thinking about, the engineering was part, understanding the technical things is nice, but the impact you can have through procurement and through the buying channel to the rest of the company was something that really was intriguing to me. So I decided right after engineering school to, go to business school. And so I got that dual degree, both in engineering and business. And that's how I got to the US. The school in France had the dual degree, French and US. So I had that, dual career, I guess. And then ended up in Arizona. Out of that, I was looking for something to do that could kind of leverage both my technical background and my business background. And procurement was kind of the way to go because especially I was looking at CapEx roles, so capital expenditure for FMCGs. You need to understand what the engineers are talking about. You need to understand the processes behind it. You need to be able to kind of challenge your supplier and your supply base. And that was
total
just
sense. Yeah. So even when you went back to business school, you weren't thinking, hey, I'm going to get into procurement. You were in that job. It sort of planted some seeds. You got your business degree.
And how do it was a fairly competitive job market, 07, 08, right at the inception of the big 08, 09 crisis. You had to leverage the strengths you had. And that was a dual approach to business, but the technical and the business side.
Yeah. What a great blend of training and background and focus. I'm sure we're going to hear more about it as we talk here, but the industrial engineering, is that what you said it was? The idea of making processes work better is to me, has been such a fundamental part of my journey in procurement. And I just see it so important, right? I think it's easy to build process and implement tools and do things that aren't really optimized for the problem you're trying to solve, right? It's just like,
I think it's exactly right. Most processes starts, as a necessity. You need to get from point A to point B, whether it's in business or not. But the Kaizen principles, the 5S, all of the Black Belt, Six Sigma, they're starting in engineering company, but it can really be applied to any type of business situation, any processes. You can look at it through that angle. That always works, and there is always room for improvement. And something in procurement, I think you look at some of the tools that are being built today, they kind of leverage that idea of continuous improvement to make everybody's life easier.
Yeah, no, that makes a huge difference. So, as you're now, how many years is this then that you've been in
Nearly
procurement?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah,
It's a full,
not quite, but
not
yeah.
a full career, but you're almost there, right?
I've been pretty much my entire career after grad school in procurement. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure a lot of really good, roles and opportunities ahead of you. You mentioned Danone. You're with Bic now. Were other companies in the journey?
Those are really the big companies. And then I had the chance of having lots of different roles, whether they were very local first and CapEx oriented to different categories, regional categories. So I've had quite a broad experience within the company, and then Bic is more of a global journey at that point.
Yeah.
Really interesting, problems to solve. Both of them in the FMCG role, so more consumer oriented.
So you're talking about like engineering, the blend of engineering and with suppliers and working with your internal team. Do you in Danone? I mean, I know Danone from a yogurt perspective or other food perspective. I don't know how broad the food portfolio is there, but is that where you were applying the engineering to the CapEx, the factories, and all of that?
Pretty much. That's how everything started, right? So I started doing CapEx procurement here in Utah. So Danone has a big plant in West Jordan. And I was one of the biggest CapEx projects they had ever done. So they needed for the first time, or nearly one of the first time, a dedicated team on site. So there was a team of engineering, and we were two buyers working on the projects to really support the team. It was a 2-year, $20 to $25 million for the first phase. I think the total project was close to $100 million of spend. And so the question is, how do you make sure that the engineering the technical specs are the right one, they're flexible enough for the future, and from a procurement perspective, it's the right value proposition, it's the right technical solution. So really playing that dual role of advisor, kind of challenging the needs, and then working with suppliers to making sure that whatever proposal they come up with is fitting what the engineering team needs to do. And with that, I was young in my career, you have to be curious. You have to, one of the big things that I was doing was walking the floor, spending a night here and there with the engineering team, working on the machine startups, working on the debugging of a machine to really understand how it was working. And from there, what questions to ask, what technical solution works or doesn't work. And you can challenge your supply base. You can go to shows and really kind of get an idea of what's going to be the next big thing. We were going from more of a robot or mechanical packaging to some robotics in there. So how was it going to work? All of the discussions around, I'm going to be very technical and I apologize, but the mean time between failures and how much, conveyors do you need to make sure the lines can continue on running. So those are kind of things you get into your mind, and then that, in my opinion at least, it forms a way of thinking as you go to a plant for the next time, and next companies, how is maintenance being planned, how is the master planning being done, and really understanding that industrial mindset, so you can really work with your supply base, make plans, and really develop that strategy around CapEx.
Yeah, that's such a cool opportunity to use this other passion of yours, which is engineering. I mean, I imagine there's a lot of people listening and through their procurement careers that have kind of lived in this place where it feels so much more transactional. Like, hey, here's this thing, go negotiate it and move on to the next thing. And what you're describing is a whole lot more collaborative, like embedded in with the core business.
And it has to be. I think if you want to grow in your career, the very transactional stuff is a necessary evil to some extent. We need to do it. We need to deliver short-term results. But the true impact comes once you start talking to your plant directors, talking to your industrial directors about what's the direction you want to go. What are the big technological advancements that we need to look for? And then you work with your supply base. You work on developing a solution something maybe sometimes it's even more tactical than that, but still longer looking, knowing that you're going to have investment for the next 3, 4, 5 years in certain kind of technology. How can you, potentially reserve some capacity at your suppliers so you have first access to them, so you have better terms and conditions, so you know you can standardize your machinery park across your plants, and then it has impact on your operational expenses. And it goes back to the business side at that point. Thinking not only on the cost of the capex or the efficiency of the capex, but how do you run the plants? How do you run multiple plants to optimize capex, to optimize maintenance, to optimize runtimes, to optimize the entire P&L of the company rather than just the capex side, which is a small piece of the equation.
Well, I imagine a lot of what you're describing resonates very loudly with our friends in supply chain that work in factories, right? So, because it's very natural if you're switching out parts or doing sort of materials engineering and all the things that are kind of part and parcel of that. But we have tons of people in procurement that are focused on indirect side. You're on indirect now, and so I'm sure some people are like, yeah, or no, like if I was in the factory with the engineers, like, yeah, that's really obvious and easy. How do you take that kind of deep collaborative engineering and innovation out of the factory? Now you're on the indirect side. Do you see a translation of that same kind of principle for the rest of us that are working on the indirect side?
Yeah, I think there is a definite translation to all of that. I think the collaboration, and that's the beauty of procurement. In procurement, we touch the entire business. We're not just production, we're not just sales, we're not just marketing. We have, as a procurement organization, we touch the entirety of the business. We're a true global support function, and that allows us to create partnership and see things that other functions may not see. It allows us to really break silos, and that's the approach we need to take. Even in a factory example, in a factory or in an industrial environment, you may have a product team that's specialized in capex, and they only see the cost of capex. They may forget the cost of changeovers, the cost of maintenance, the cost of all those other accessory costs that, at the end of the day, over the 5-10 years of a machine, may make up more than the price of the machine.
Yeah.
So focusing on those and breaking the silos is something that you have to do. Obviously, it's obvious if you work in a plant, but if you're a technical engineer in a headquarters that don't see the plant every day, you may not really realize that. And that's what we can do in indirect also. When I work with the marketing team or I work with the logistics team, they all have very specific needs based on location. But if you take a step back and you take your elevator view or helicopter view, there is some commonalities. And the question for us is, how do we leverage those? How do we keep flexibility for the local needs while leveraging the size that we may have as a corporation? Yeah. What are the best practices that we can roll around? One plant may have one way of measuring OTIF, another one may have another one. What's the right way? How do we come up with one global solution so we have common dashboards? And that's, again, the collaboration part of procurement that is really interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, and I think, deep in all of that, whether you're in the factory or you're in the office with HR, finance, or IT, it seems to me that it requires the extra effort and time and investment to understand their business, understand what they're trying to accomplish, right? If you're in the factory, there's output, there's quality, there's those kind of things I think are maybe, I don't want to say obvious, but maybe they're more obvious. But if you force yourself beyond, I guess they're not even more obvious. Like, I'm sure that the engineers, you're helping them in that process do the things that you're talking about, like understanding the mean time between failure and the maintenance and a whole bunch of other stuff that kind of wraps up into the total cost or the total value. But when you're on the indirect side, I think those same principles, I love that you're bringing the engineering background into the indirect. I mean, how does engineering apply to HR? How does engineering, you could say, sure, it applies to IT, but I think the principles are still universal.
It is. At the end of the day, to me, it's common sense. And there is a saying, common sense is the least common of all of the senses, but it's how do you look at a business or a line of functions or line of business and really go down to processes and what is the true need? What is it that we're trying to achieve? What's your why as a function? If you lead a conversation with what your why and what is your objective, then you can work together on finding the right ways of working, finding the right providers to support the objectives. HR, they have lots of different providers that support HR, from the payroll perspective to the everything around employee benefits. There is a lot of personal data that needs to be managed. All of those is what's the strategy behind it? What are we trying to achieve as an organization? And then from there, how do we get it together? Temporary labor is another one. What's our people policy or people strategy? What do we want to do together? Yeah. And then from there, we can really kind of come together to an agreement, find the right processes that's going to make everybody's life easy. If we take the temp labor side, there's lots of different models from a MSP perspective to a more, locally managed temp agencies. What are we trying to achieve? Is it to reduce process time? Is it to ease approvals? Is it to have better control? But what are we trying to achieve? And then from there, we can get it together and find the right model.
Yeah, absolutely. This brings to mind something I love to say and share, which is this question. Are we procurement people doing business, or are we business people doing procurement? And well, I mean, you could be either, right? But one, I think, says I'm part of the business, and then I'm going to go do these procurement things. And it's it's two sides to the same coin. But I think encouraging people to really embed and understand the business and operate to the business goals and priorities, instead of, sometimes I think in procurement it's easy to get fixated on, we gotta get 10% savings, or these goals that are feel more separate from they support the business. I'm not saying those goals aren't important, but anyway.
But at the same time, I think we need both. And the reason why is, if you're a business person doing procurement, you may have the tendency to say, okay, I just need that right now, thinking about your problem right now without thinking of the whole company or the whole needs of the company. It can be a bit too siloed. As a procurement person, that's where we can bring the overall the business vision, or that transversal vision of what does the rest of the company needs, and bring that supply consolidation ideas. It's not hard saving. It's not procurement only KPIs, but really, how do we make our operations more nimble, more solid, less risky, that kind of thing. And I think that's where being a procurement person doing business is also very important.
Yeah, you get a totally different perspective, right? And I love that idea, like blend the perspectives together. So you are, and that's probably, I mean, that's magic. If you can figure out how to like focus on the procurement perspective, the broader organization perspective, the business, bring those things together. I know that you are super passionate about supplier relationship management. I know this is connected here, because as you're doing all the collaboration in the factory or with the supplier, with your internal engineers, that's part of the collaboration. But here now you have this whole resource, which is your supplier. I'd love to, I think earlier you'd shared a story about working with some dairies in a really strategic changeover for the business. Can you share a little bit about that?
Sure. I think that's, one of the best experience I've ever had in my professional life. And if you talk to the team I was working with at the time, it's one of the best time we all had on a professional level, from the most junior to the most senior people on a team. It's one of the best time ever we had. So I was working at the time at Danone in a milk team, so the milk procurement team. And we're really trying to, understand how does milk procurement can affect Danone. What can we do differently to differentiate Danone, which is a dairy company, towards its competitors? And one of the big assets that we had was our relationship with farms. We had changed the model of buying milk in the US. We had gone away from the market pricing and going through a co-op to source our milk to a more direct approach with producers. And the question was, how can we leverage that? How can we bring that model, use that model to bring a competitive advantage to the brand? And that's where, procurement is a business partner who help grow the company. That's, it's not saving, it's about growth at that point and unlocking value for the business. Our first thought was about, hey, we need to differentiate ourselves on animal welfare and quality standards and things like that, which was something that we take for granted. But how can we go above and beyond? It was at the time where there was a lot of scandals because of animal abuse, and you heard about PETA a bit more than you do today. Yeah. So that was the first step, but it wasn't enough. And so we wanted to be an affordable brand, yet we saw the benefit of the organic milk and all of the claims around that. And the question was, could we provide an organic-like benefit to the consumer at a pricing that is closer to a conventional milk pricing? And that's where Danone made a pledge of launching a non-GMO product, a non-GMO milk product to the market. That's milk coming from cows that are fed a non-GMO diet. And that supply chain did not exist on the market in the US whatsoever. That was in 2016. And so the challenge,
total changeover all the way back to the cows.
yeah, how do we feed the cows? So going tier 1 or tier 2 of your supply base,
Even to
the supply of the feed seed and stuff. And we made a pledge, I think it was early 2016, and we had 18 months to go to market. And the only reason we were able to
18 months to change the feed, the seed, wow.
create an entire supply chain to feed cows. And when you think about it, to feed cows, you need to plant the seed. They grow for 5 to 6 months. And you need to harvest them. They need to ferment for 6 months, and then you need to kind of feed the cows for a few months before the.
You have Mother Nature limitations here.
There is so much you can do in a certain amount of time, and that's where the power of the relationship came into. Because we had those direct relationship with farms, we were able to work with them, with their growers, with their seed suppliers, on creating that supply chain, on making sure we would have enough non-GMO milk feed or feed stuff for the cows to be fed on time, and launch the product on the market for April 2017, I think was the date, or May 2017. I don't remember exactly, but we had lots of meetings with lots of producers, with their growers, with their seed suppliers. We put lots of working groups together. We looked at models on how to share risk, because nobody knew how it was going to impact yields. Were we going to be able to grow enough feed for all of those cows? That was a big question. Are we going to have too much loss because now that you cannot spread the crops the way you used to? You may have more weeds, less yield. Are you going to damage the crops? Are you going to be able to do the same rotation as you did before? So it was a complete change of mindset for lots of people across the loans, and we had to share the risk. Danone was committed to the concept, but we had some price constraints. We could not pass too much to the consumer, and we could not take a loss either. How do we make it work? I had to be working together, some gain share programs and things like that. Some guaranteed, we put some money down at the time. We had to, but it worked. It's still something that's going on right now. And you see more and more brands with the non-GMO certified logo on it. It's the butterfly logo if you go to the supermarket.
Yeah.
Area. I think the Fayette brand now has that. There's quite a few other brands who spot the logo.
I can't even imagine the change management, the education, the influence, all like before you even get to it, to convince people we got to start, and to jam all that into 18 months is.
It was an adventure, but it was, the analogy I think I gave you when we prepped for the call was we basically jumped off the cliff, and we collectively built the plane as we were falling down, and we were able to land it safely 18 months later.
What a great success story, and really cool to see the contribution of procurement and supply chain in with the engineering to deliver a very strategic, impactful value to the corporation.
Yeah, and on top of the unseen of that, you mentioned the engineering side is you had to also prepare your plants for the new type of milk, because you still had the regular conventional and the new one. So you have to segregate lines. You have to make a lot of changes on your plants.
So it's like double.
So that was another side of the business that I wasn't part of. But yeah, it was a big undertaking. But it was a fun time. We worked hard, but we also celebrated the wins hard together. With our partners, with the company. It was brilliant.
I've had a couple of career moments like that as well, when you're kind of working on a project or working with your team, and you just know inside yourself, like, this is special. Like this isn't going to happen again in my career, and it might go on for a year or two or whatever, but you just feel that, and looking back, what a great memory. And you just hunt for those things, right? I mean, if somebody had the ability to create those over and over again, everyone would just assemble together, because whatever role you are in those teams, it's rewarding. And
absolutely, I think that's an advice that you can give to anybody. If you ever come across an opportunity that you feel like in your belly it's going to be special, even if it's not exactly what you do, just jump on it. only good can happen. Even if it's not successful, you're going to learn from it. You're going to be able to grow out of it and grow from it. So it just jump on special project.
I tell my kids all the time, it's not what you earn, it's what you learn.
Yeah.
And those moments, like what a shame if, you had that opportunity and there was some salary question, like you're not giving me a big enough raise to go do that job or something. And at the end of the day, it's life changing, it's career changing.
And it was scary. We had conversation with our boss at the time, say, we're not going to be able to do it. Like, we're insane. The vision was there. How we're going to land the plan, we had no idea. And so it takes guts, it takes courage. But again, if you're able to stick to it because you believe in it, because you know what you have to support you, it's super rewarding and something that's unique that I wish for anyone to experience once in their career.
Yeah, no, awesome. So all of that wrapped up, and this is awesome. If you could grab a magic wand, I mean, here we are sitting in, the latter half of 2025, and you all the stuff that's going on around us. There's AI, there's, geopolitical, there's just so many things. And now you're leading the indirect procurement team at BIC. You could wave a magic wand and accomplish something, or just make it appear to the benefit of your company and your team. What's your focus right now? What are you really trying to, deliver and achieve?
Yeah. So if, I go back to more practical day-to-day stuff today, especially in the indirect area, I think the big concern and the big difficulties we faced is indirect is very broad. It's everything that's not going into your product, right? So it goes from how many pens you buy, and I work for a pen company, so it's not a good example, but the stationary things you buy, which is not really relevant to some very important logistics spend. And the question is, how do you manage such a diversity? And to me, the big magic wand I wish we had, and we find a efficient way to put into place, because to exist, is really how do we automate and manage the tail spend in a way that is easy for stakeholders. And I think that's a very recurring conversation within the procurement world, is how do we ease stakeholder engagement, make it easier for stakeholder to work with procurement, and at the same time automate the non-strategic, the very tactical spend that doesn't really matter in the P&L, right? It's something that we need to do, that we need to run the business. But if you run out of pens,
Run down the street.
You run down the street, you're going to buy a few more. It's going to cost you maybe $1 more, but you're going to figure out eventually, right?
Yeah.
You're not going to stop your production line down or anything like that. So being able to free up resources from the tactical, busy work to a more strategic. And to go back to what we were discussing, I wish I could spend more time working and creating relationship with suppliers so we could actually unlock that next value proposition. It goes back to procurement is not saving money. Procurement is bringing value. And that's two different things. Value is beyond the hard cost saving. It's enabling growth. It's enabling more consumer reach. It's enabling all those kind of things. Getting to the consumer first. How do you unlock your supply chain to get to consumer faster than your competitor? Yeah. That's where supplier management is extremely important. We need to be closer to innovative supplier. We need to be closer to our current supplier, leverage their innovation, leverage their new tools. And we cannot do that if we're too busy running small events on tactical spend. And I think that's a challenge that I'm not the only one experiencing. BIC is not the only company experiencing it. And we need to find ways to do it more efficiently. We used to rely on, buy desk out of India or some other countries. Now there is a lot of tools that are coming up. Are they worth it? I think that's the jury still out. That's probably the future. Autonomous sourcing tool who can run a bid in any country very efficiently.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting, this effort to get to be more strategic and spend more time on strategic things goes all the way, 30 years in my career back to when I started, right? I don't know when procurement cards became a thing, right? But at some point in the 90s when I was there, Intel was using a procurement card. And with the basic premise that like this super high volume, very low dollar is a big distraction to all the other things that we can do. And and by the way, that's been a very powerful tool for a lot of organizations. Like this is pre-internet, pre-catalogs, pre a whole bunch of other stuff, right? Where it's just empowering the end users. And technologies change, processes change, things have evolved. You know, figuring out a way to continue that journey towards automation, I think becomes really important. And what I've observed is that the role of indirect procurement has evolved as well, right? 30 years ago, we would rarely do any risk due diligence and background checks, like almost nothing, right? And then sometime like 10 or 15 years ago, it all changed, right? Because it went from, almost nothing and a one-day process to how about cyber? How about modern slavery? How about privacy? How about like da 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 da, this whole list of things that, of course, on the supply chain side, like supply chain risk management and, all of that has been around for a long time. Yeah, like I like to think all the way back to like the first Ford factory that was making cars. You have to have wheels, you have to have steering, all of these things have to be in place. But indirect has changed, and there's been a shift from the um the role of how do we deal with that risk and due diligence. In the first year or two, I think it was kind of like, well, that's an IT thing or that's a legal thing. And I think now procurement leaders like yourself are going, no, like I'm the voice of the customer. This is my process. When it takes an extra 3 weeks, they don't, you know, they hold the process and the owner of the process responsible for that, which is the buck stops with me, right? I'm the head. So your job as a leader of indirect procurement is no longer just like a CPO role; it's a CPO and a risk role. And so this ever expanding scope of what you need to do, yeah, you don't get extra resources to go do this. It's like the job is almost doubled, but the people haven't doubled. So you've got to like it's just demanding more and more and more automation.
Exactly. I think there is automation, and especially since we're doing, to your point, more checks than we used to do ever for the same amount of people. And a lot of it is, again, it's a busy bee work, right? It's having to go check on a credit report, having to go check on, a EcoVadis score or whatever that is. It's just things that can be automated. And I would love to be able to free up all of those resources to do some more value-added work. Even the added value work could be on contract management to make sure that we have alerts in place that could be automated, but then we need to go contact the suppliers, we need to go talk to suppliers about their contract renewals and what their objectives are, and it goes back to that SRM piece. And so to me the automation is not only on the process, which is the supplier onboarding, the payment stuff, the true P2P admin stuff, and really then taking those resources and focusing on your supplier relationship management, your business partnering. We need to be closer to our business stakeholders. How do we embed ourselves onto a marketing team? How do we embed ourselves into a logistics team without being a fly on the wall, but truly being an active participant and bringing solutions? So
it's coming all the way back to where we started, right?
It goes back to that. And it's, I think, how do we evolve our operating models to allow for that and leverage technology as we do today? That there is so much more we can do.
Yeah. Well, and thankfully, with the arrival of this new version of AI, and I'm starting to feel hopeful, right?
Yes.
20 years ago, we're talking about RPA and all these things, and just so many things have sort of not delivered. This one feels like it's delivering, and it's going to really open that door. So
very more specific, right? Today there's lots of large language model. They seem kind of overkill to me. Ideally, if you look at an intake tool to help with your requests from stakeholders, do you need an LLM for that? Or could you work with a small language model that is more specific to your company? That maybe is cheaper to put in place, and you don't have all of the leakage and creation of false content that can happen. So I think there is a lot of emerging tech that could be extremely helpful for procurement in the future. And the big question is, in a time of constraints, we don't know where the economy is going. Some CPGs companies are not doing so well. How do we justify spending money on new tools when we have already lots of resources? So what's the equation? How do we write the equation?
It has to be valued.
Yes.
Yeah, no, 100%. And I'm like, my entire 30 years have been focused on making procurement work better. And this last 7 years at Graphite, like this the ever growing complexity around supplier management is really a passion of mine to go fix that and come up with the best possible technology and solutions to do that. So this has been. I love this conversation. I love where this is going because it really gets back to things that I care so much about: enabling business success. Being in the business, like doing the right things, not being transactional. But
And you need a strong foundation to do that. Again, a good procurement team starts with good data. We used to say that in dairy, but sorry for my French, shit in, shit out. So if you have bad data in, you have bad data out. So we need to have really good foundations from your data perspective that you can build upon. And I think, having that initial step of cleaning up, making sure your master data is cohesive across the board, especially when you go to multinational organization. You're going to have different ERPs, you're going to have different languages. It's going to be harder, but we need collectively to make an effort of cleaning it up and standardizing it. And then from there, we can really build those capability blocks that's going to allow us to move forward, be more strategic. And it doesn't mean that we should forget about the tactical stuff. The tactical stuff is super important. To your point, it's high volume. It's lower value, but it's high volume. And that needs to be managed one way or the other. If we don't manage it as a procurement team, it's going to leak. The scope is going to increase. It's going to creep. And we may not confront the risk. We may be exposed to things we don't know. So we have to have the right controls, tools, teams, AI, or true people team or machines team to kind of manage it, make sure we have the right processes around it, and then use our human power, our human connections to really be closer to the business and bring connections to life.
Yeah. One of the things I've seen happen through my career is this persistence of self-service as a strategy. Like, I'm going to cut the head count in my team, or I'm going to like make my workload more manageable by having the business do more and more of these tasks, because I give them a portal to go do their own stuff. And I think there's elements of that are genius, but unfortunately, for too many years, we've implemented systems that translate into, now it's harder for the business. It takes longer for the business, right? So I think it's really important as we think about more automation of the tail, or beyond the strategic stuff that we want to manage, the stuff we really want to have our arms around, that tactical stuff, we need to do it in a way that it doesn't become a distraction and a cost and a frustration to the business, right? It's okay, I think, to push self-service and say, you push this button, you get your pens. But if that adds a whole bunch of cost and complexity and frustration, then we've got to design it to work better.
Yeah, absolutely. And even on the self-service stuff, that works for some categories. For some other, it will not, because they're too unique of a request, right? And that's where tools that can do automatic bidding, or you say, I want XYZ in natural language. This is my spec. This is my location. Being able to do the supplier discovery, make sure the RFP sent out right automatically, and then having the analytics and the people to manage the tool behind it. Because what may seem like very unique for one location, if you take it across 2, 3, 4 years and multiple locations, you may have some similar needs that kind of come up. Yeah. That's where the data foundation is very important, because if you're able to extract it, then you may be able to come up with a more focused strategy for that subcategory. It's going to take time. It's not going to be overnight, but that's the vision in my mind, is let's take those automation tools to give us a good foundation of data. And then us, with our human eyes and our human power, we need to come up, scrub it up a little bit, and come up with a more pragmatic approach for the entire company. And I think that's how we're going to keep on getting better, and managing our supply base better, and creating the right partnership, enabling our stakeholders to be more efficient in their ways of working also.
Yeah. Well, I got to tell you, your reference to data as the foundation really resonates with me. I often use this idea of, if you don't fix your data, you build your other stuff on top of it, then now you're going to have to remodel the foundation underneath your other investment. And that's never going to turn out well. Okay. Well, I want to kind of think back to the younger Arnaud, coming out of school, engineering, business school, with all the knowledge and all the experience that you had. And there's a lot of people listening to us at different levels of their career. What would you tell yourself? Like, what are the big learnings that really stand out to you that maybe you wish you knew earlier, that you'd love to share with the audience?
I think the one I gave earlier still is very true. Is if there is a project that you come across that seems really interesting, that you feel in yourself that it's going to be a career changing, personal changing moment, go for it. Go apply for the project, volunteer for it, and just take some risk in there. If you want or if you expect change to come to you, it's never going to happen. You have to go get it.
Yeah.
And to do that, you have to be curious, keep on reading, keep on learning, go to networking events and listen generously. There is a rule that somebody told me once, which is the 21 rules. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we should listen twice as much as we speak. So go and listen to people, go meet with them, listen to what they have to teach you, and volunteer yourself for new stuff. I think if you can volunteer yourself to a procurement reorganization or update of tools, or to roll out a tool, go for it. That's how you're going to grow, and you're going to get new perspective on things. Don't be shy.
Yeah. I love that. One of our best friends at Graphite, from early investor, he has a quote that they always would say, which is, if your goals don't scare you, they're not big enough. Right? Those moments when you're like, oh, I'm anxious about this, is probably it. The reptilian brain inside of us is like, stop. But what really should happen is that should be the green light that says, this is something that's really going to make a difference in my life and my career and what I'm doing. Oh, that's fantastic. Any last parting thoughts?
No, I think that's really it, right? Is go with your gut to some extent, and be curious. Don't be scared, and ask for more.
Well, I absolutely love it. Arnaud, thanks for taking a few minutes with us over here at Proc-N-Roll. And to all of you, this is amazing practical advice and feedback from Arnaud, one of the best in the industry, and one of my very favorite people. If you like this, take a moment to like and comment and share, and come back again for some more content.